The rain had not stopped for 3 days. It came at London sideways, in grey curtains that smeared the windows of the taxicab and turned the pavements of Mayfair into dark, reflecting mirrors. Through the glass, the city appeared drowned, its grand facades slick and distorted, its lamplights haloed in mist, its people reduced to hunched silhouettes moving beneath umbrellas that the wind kept threatening to invert. Hercule Poirot sat in the rear of the cab, his patent leather shoes balanced carefully on the edge of the seat opposite, his grey overcoat buttoned to the chin, his mustache, that magnificent, immaculate, symmetrical mustache, freshly waxed despite the weather. One hand rested on the silver handle of his cane. The other held a gilt-edged invitation card, printed on heavy cream stock in a typeface that could only be described as self-congratulatory. The Art and Gallery, Cork Street, Mayfair, cordially invites you to the private viewing of the final portrait, the posthumous exhibition of works by Julian Doyle, 1895 to 1936. Thursday evening, the 14th of November, 7 o'clock. Below the printed text, someone had added in fountain pen, in a woman's elegant hand, Monsieur Poirot, I should be most grateful if you would attend. There is a matter I wish to discuss with you. It concerns a painting and a death. V.H. The initials meant nothing to him. The words, however, meant a great deal. A painting and a death. Poirot had learned, across the long arc of his career, that the combination of art and death was rarely accidental. Art, you see, was a mirror. And mirrors, as he had once remarked to Hastings, show not only what is there, but what the observer wishes to see, and what the observer wishes to hide. Therein lay the danger. He reread the handwritten note. The penmanship was assured, each letter formed with precision, yet there was something in the downward stroke of the D in death, a fractional heaviness, as if the pen had been pressed too hard, that suggested the writer had hesitated. Just for a moment, just long enough to reconsider. But she had not crossed it out. Here we are, Gov, said the driver, pulling to a stop. Cork Street. Poirot descended into the rain. The Art and Gallery occupied the ground floor of a handsome Georgian building, its tall windows throwing amber light onto the wet pavement. Through the glass, Poirot could see the exhibition already in full swing. A crowd of 40 or 50 people, most of them dressed with the studied carelessness that the English upper classes mistake for elegance. Champagne flutes caught the light. A string quartet played something by Debussy, barely audible above the murmur of conversation. He surrendered his overcoat and umbrella to a girl at the door, adjusted his bow tie in the hallway mirror with the solemnity of a surgeon checking his instruments, and entered the gallery. The paintings hit him at once, not because they were beautiful, though some of them were, but because they were unsettling. The canvases were large, some nearly 6 feet tall, and the subjects were almost exclusively women. Women in drawing rooms and gardens, women at piano, women turning from windows. But there was something wrong with all of them, something in the eyes. Poirot moved closer to the nearest painting, a dark-haired woman in a green dress seated before a fireplace, and studied it with the same attention he would give to a crime scene. The technique was superb, the brushwork confident, the light rendered with extraordinary sensitivity. But the woman's expression, her lips curved in what might have been a smile, her dark eyes fixed on something beyond the frame, held a quality that Poirot could only describe as knowledge, not happiness, not serenity, knowledge. As though she knew something the viewer did not, and the knowing gave her no pleasure at all. Magnificent, isn't he? Poirot turned. A man had materialized beside him, tall, thin, with the sort of face that appeared to have been assembled from spare parts. A long nose, deep-set grey eyes, a mouth that sat slightly crooked as though permanently amused by a joke no one else had heard. He wore a well-cut suit badly, his collar undone, his dark hair falling across his forehead. Roland Arden, said the man, extending a hand. "This is my gallery, and that," he nodded at the painting, "is one of Julian Doyle's early works, The Woman in Green, painted in 1928. The model was his wife, Vivienne." "His wife," Poirot repeated, looking again at the painting. "She is the woman in the eyes of her husband, then. And what does the husband see?" Arden's crooked mouth twitched. "You're Poirot, aren't you?" "The detective." "I am Hercule Poirot, yes. Vivienne said you might come. She'll be pleased." He paused, then added more quietly, "She needs help, Monsieur Poirot. I think she needs it rather badly." "And the nature of this help?" Arden glanced over his shoulder, as if checking that no one was listening. The gallery chattered on, oblivious. Julian Doyle died 7 months ago. Officially, it was heart failure. He was 41 years old, in perfect health, and he dropped dead in his studio in the middle of painting a portrait. Arden's voice had gone very flat. Nobody questioned it at the time. But Vivienne, she's questioned it since. She thinks he was murdered. And you? What do you think, Monsieur Arden? The gallery owner looked at the painting on the wall, at the dark-haired woman with the knowing eyes, and something crossed his face that Poirot filed away for later examination. "I think," said Roland Arden, "that Julian Doyle had a talent for making people love him, and an equal talent for making them wish him dead." Before Poirot could reply, a woman emerged from the far end of the gallery, moving through the crowd with the particular grace of someone accustomed to being looked at. She was tall, nearly as tall as Arden, with dark hair swept back from a pale, angular face, high cheekbones, a wide mouth, eyes that were very nearly black. She wore a simple black dress that made the pearls at her throat seem to glow. Poirot recognized her at once, not from life, but from paint. She was the woman in the painting. Older now, of course. The 8 years between the canvas and the present had drawn finer lines around her mouth, and there was a quality in her bearing that had not been there in the portrait. A tension, tightly controlled, like a wire drawn almost to the point of snapping. "Monsieur Poirot?" Her voice was low, steady, with the faintest trace of something continental. French, perhaps, or Swiss. "Thank you for coming. I am Vivienne Hale. I was Vivienne Doyle." "Enchanté, madame." Poirot took her offered hand and bowed over it. "You wrote to me of a painting and a death. You have my attention entirely." "Not here," she said. "There are too many ears in this room, and most of them are attached to people who would enjoy nothing more than fresh gossip about the widow Doyle." She glanced at the crowd. "Will you come upstairs? There is a private room." She led them, Poirot and Arden trailing behind, through a door at the back of the gallery, up a narrow staircase, and into a small, well-furnished sitting room. A fire burned in the grate. The curtains were drawn against the rain. On the wall above the mantelpiece hung a single painting, covered with a cloth. Vivienne closed the door, locked it, and turned to face Poirot. The controlled composure she had worn downstairs was still in place, but here, in the private room, Poirot could see the effort it cost her. Her hands, clasped before her, were not entirely steady. "My husband was murdered, Monsieur Poirot. I know that with a certainty I cannot explain and cannot prove. And the answer, the reason, the method, perhaps even the name of the person who killed him, is in that painting." She gestured to the covered canvas above the fireplace. "Show me," said Poirot. Vivienne reached up and pulled away the cloth. The painting beneath it was a portrait. A woman, young, perhaps 25, reclined on a chaise longue in a room flooded with golden afternoon light. She was extraordinarily beautiful, with honey-colored hair falling loose around bare shoulders and a gaze directed straight at the viewer with an intensity that bordered on confrontation. She wore a white silk robe that had slipped from one shoulder, revealing the curve of a collarbone, and in her right hand she held a single red rose, its petals just beginning to open. But it was the face that held Poirot, The artist had painted it with a precision that went beyond mere skill. It was an act of devotion. Every shadow beneath the cheekbones, every fleck of light in the green eyes, every strand of hair had been rendered with a tenderness that was almost painful to observe. This was not simply a portrait. It was a love letter written in oil and pigment. "Who is she?" Poirot asked, though something in the way Vivienne's jaw had tightened told him the answer would not be simple. "Her name was Margot Lennox," said Vivienne. Her voice did not waver, but Poirot noticed that she did not look at the painting. She was Julian's model, his muse, he called her. For 2 years, she was also his mistress. Was? Margot died. 3 years before Julian, she drowned in the lake at Ashgrove. That was Julian's country house in Berkshire. It was ruled an accident. She had been drinking, they said. She went walking alone at night near the water and she slipped. And you do not believe this? I believed it then. I had no reason not to. Margot she was careless, wild. She drank too much and she laughed too loudly and she did not care who she hurt. She was the kind of woman accidents happen to. Vivienne's voice had gone quiet. But then Julian died. And after he died, I found things. Letters, sketches, and this painting, this portrait, hidden in his studio, behind a false panel in the wall. He had been working on it in secret, for months. Working on it? Poirot frowned, but Margot Lennox was already dead. Yes, said Vivienne, he was painting her from memory, or from obsession. The portrait is dated 6 weeks before his death. He was painting a dead woman, Monsieur Poirot. A woman he had loved, a woman he had lost, and a woman whose death I now believe was not an accident at all. The room was very quiet. The fire crackled. Rain streaked the windows. You believe, said Poirot slowly, that Margot Lennox was murdered, and that your husband discovered this, perhaps through the act of painting her, through the memory of her, and that this discovery led to his own death. I do, and the painting is at the center. It has to be. Julian was not a sentimental man. He was ruthless in his art. He painted what he saw, not what he felt. If he spent months working on this portrait in secret, it was because he was trying to see something, to understand something, and whatever he saw, whatever he understood, it killed him. Poirot stepped closer to the painting. He examined it with the care of a man who has spent a lifetime reading evidence that others have overlooked, not with the eye of an art critic, but with the eye of a detective. The composition, the light, the position of the hands, the rose, the expression in those green eyes. Tell me everything, he said, from the beginning. Omit nothing. Vivienne poured 3 glasses of brandy, handed one to Poirot, one to Arden, and kept the third for herself. She sat down in the armchair by the fire, crossed her ankles, and began. I married Julian in 1924. I was 22. He was 29 and already making a name for himself as a portrait painter. Not the fashionable kind. He despised the society portrait market, all those lords and ladies wanting to look 10 years younger and infinitely more distinguished than they were. Julian painted people as they were, which is to say, he painted the truth, and the truth is rarely flattering. A dangerous quality in a portraitist, Poirot observed. Very, but that is precisely why certain people sought him out. There is a type of person, usually wealthy, usually powerful, who craves honesty the way others crave praise. Julian attracted these people, and they paid handsomely. She took a sip of brandy. For the first few years, we were happy, or at least I believed we were happy, which may not be the same thing. We had a flat in Chelsea and the house at Ashgrove, a beautiful Elizabethan place with gardens running down to a lake. Julian painted. I managed the household, organized exhibitions, handled the correspondence. We entertained. We had a circle. This circle, said Poirot. Describe it to me. Vivienne set down her glass. There were 5 of us who were always there. Julian and myself, of course. Then Roland. She glanced at Arden, who was Julian's closest friend. They had known each other since Oxford. Arden shifted in his chair but said nothing. Then there was Edmund Farley. Edmund is a collector, enormously wealthy, old family. One of those men who has never had to work a day in his life and has therefore developed very expensive tastes to fill the void. He collected Julian's paintings. He was Julian's most important patron. And the 5th, Dr. Leo Stannard, Julian's physician and friend, a Harley Street man. Brilliant, or so everyone said. He treated half of fashionable London. Nerves, mostly. Women's nerves. There was a faint edge to her voice. Leo was charming. He had a way of making you feel that you were the only person in the room who mattered. Julian trusted him absolutely. And Margot Lennox. She was not part of this original circle. No, she arrived later, in the spring of 1932. Julian was exhibiting at the Royal Academy, and she came to the opening. Nobody knew who she was or who had brought her. She was 23, extraordinarily beautiful, and she had absolutely no money, no family, no connections. She told people she was an actress, but nobody had ever seen her in anything. She was a blank page, Monsieur Poirot. A beautiful, dangerous blank page. And your husband began to paint her. He said she had the most extraordinary face he had ever seen, that the light fell on it differently, that she was born to be painted. Vivienne's voice was steady, but Poirot could hear the years of contained feeling beneath it. He began with sketches, then studies, then the first portrait, and somewhere between the first sitting and the 20th, they became lovers. You knew? Of course I knew. Julian was not discreet about his passions, and I was not blind, but I had learned, one learns, in marriage to a certain kind of man, that these things burn. They burn very brightly, and then they go out. Julian had had infatuations before, models, patrons' wives, a ballerina once. They never lasted. He always came back. But Margot was different. For the first time, Vivienne looked directly at the portrait. She studied it for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice had changed, not louder, not softer, but somehow older. Margot was different because she understood him. She understood the cruelty in his work, and she was not afraid of it. She understood that when he painted, he was dissecting, taking apart the person before him, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but the truth. Most people ran from that. Margot ran toward it. She wanted to be seen, completely and without mercy. And Julian had never found anyone like that before. And this continued for 2 years. 2 years. 2 years of my husband spending half his time at Ashgrove with her, painting. 2 years of whispers at dinner parties, sympathetic looks from women I barely knew, and Edmund Farley buying every canvas Julian produced as though collecting evidence. 2 years of Leo Stannard prescribing me sedatives and telling me that all marriages go through difficult periods. But then, said Poirot, then Margot died. In September 1933, a Saturday evening, we were all at Ashgrove, Julian, myself, Roland, Edmund, Leo, and Margot. It was meant to be a celebration. Julian had just completed a major commission, a portrait of Lord Hartington that had been well received. There was champagne, dinner, music, and afterwards, things fell apart, as they always did when Margot had too much to drink. She and Julian quarreled. About what, I never knew. She stormed out of the house. Julian refused to go after her. We all went to bed, and in the morning the groundskeeper found her body in the lake. Vivienne paused. The fire had burned low, and the room seemed to close in around them. The inquest was straightforward. Accidental drowning. Blood showed a high level of alcohol. There were no marks of violence. The coroner was sympathetic and brief. Margot had no family to object, no one to ask difficult questions. She was buried in the village churchyard at Ashgrove, and within a month, it was as though she had never existed. And your husband? How did he respond to her death? Vivienne was quiet for a moment. He stopped painting. For 6 months, he did not touch a brush. He barely spoke. He drank, not in the wild way Margot had drunk, but steadily, methodically, as though trying to dissolve something inside himself. I thought he was grieving. I thought it was guilt. I thought, God help me. I thought that once the grief passed, I would have my husband back. But something else happened. Yes, in the spring of 1934, Julian locked himself in his studio and began to paint again. But he would not show me what he was working on. He worked at night, sometimes until dawn. He became secretive, paranoid almost. He changed the lock on his studio door. He started keeping a journal, but he tore out pages and burned them. And he began asking questions, odd questions, about the night Margot died. Questions to whom? To everyone. To Roland, to Edmund, to Leo. He asked each of them separately to tell him exactly what they remembered about that evening, where they had been, what they had heard, what time they had gone to bed. The questions of a man who no longer believed in the account he had been given. And then, on the 23rd of April, 1936, Julian was found dead in his studio. He was slumped over his work table. The portrait of Margot, this portrait, was on the easel before him. His journal was open, and the last line he had written was this. Vivienne reached into a small leather case beside her chair and produced a worn notebook, open to a page near the end. She handed it to Poirot. The handwriting was rushed, almost illegible, slanting violently to the right, as though the writer had been in great haste or great distress. Poirot held the notebook to the light and read, I see it now. The rose, the hand. It was there all along. God forgive me. I painted the truth and did not know it. She was not alone at the water. Poirot read the line 3 times. Then he looked up at Vivienne, and then at the painting, and then at the notebook again. The doctor, this Dr. Stannard, he certified the death? Yes. Heart failure. No inquest. No suspicion. And the journal? This was not shared with the police. There was no reason to. The death was certified as natural. I found the journal afterwards when I was going through Julian's things. At first, I could not bring myself to read it. When I did, when I found that last entry, I did not know what to think. It was only later, when I discovered the hidden portrait, that I began to put the pieces together. Poirot set down the notebook with great care, as though it were a live thing. Madame Hale, you have brought me a most remarkable problem. A painter who spent his final months recreating from memory the portrait of his dead lover. A hidden canvas, a journal entry that speaks of a truth painted unknowingly, and a death, his death, that came just as he had begun to understand what his own art had revealed. He paused, his grey cells, those incomparable grey cells, already at work. You said there were letters also, and sketches. Yes, letters from Margot to Julian, written during the last months of her life, and sketches, dozens of them, of faces, hands, objects. I brought everything. She lifted a leather portfolio from beside her chair and placed it on the table. Poirot opened it. Inside were letters, folded, refolded, the paper soft with handling. Beneath them, loose sketches on heavy drawing paper. Poirot began to examine each one, slowly, methodically, with the patience of a man who knows that the devil, and the murderer, lives in the details. I shall need time, he said, and I shall need access to Ashgrove. The house is closed. It has been since Julian's death, but I have the keys. Bonne, and the 5 people who were present on the night of Margot's death, they're all living, all in England, all living, all in London as it happens. Then, said Hercule Poirot, closing the portfolio with a snap, we begin. Poirot did not sleep that night. He returned to his flat in Whitehaven Mansions, ordered a tisane from George, his impeccable valet, and settled himself at his desk beneath the lamp. Before him lay the portfolio Vivian had given him. He opened it and spread the contents across the desk with the systematic precision of a surgeon laying out instruments. 7 letters, 23 sketches, 1 life, disassembled into fragments. He began with the letters. They were written on cheap paper, the kind one bought at a stationer's shop in lots of 50, in a hand that was nothing like Vivian's composed copper plate. Margot Lennox wrote in a sprawling, impatient script full of dashes and underlinings, the letters leaning forward as though racing to get ahead of themselves. The ink varied, blue, black, once a vivid green, suggesting they had been written at different times and with whatever pen came to hand. The first letter was dated March 1933, 6 months before Margot's death. Julian, darling, you looked at me today as though you were trying to decide whether I was real. I told you I was real and you said, that's what they all say, and went back to mixing your cadmium yellow. You are impossible, and I adore you, and I hate you in approximately equal measure. I sat for the portrait again this afternoon. The new one, the one with the rose. You wouldn't let me see it. You never let me see them until they're finished, and I suppose that is part of your sadistic charm. But I did catch a glimpse when you went to answer the telephone, and I must tell you, the eyes are wrong. You've made me look as though I know something. I don't know anything, Julian. I'm the most ignorant woman in England. Ask anyone. Edmund came to the studio while you were out. He sat in your chair and smoked your cigarettes and looked at your canvases without asking permission. He does this more and more. I don't like the way he looks at the paintings, Julian. He looks at them the way a man looks at things he intends to own. Come back soon. The house is cold without you. Monsieur Poirot set the letter down and reached for the second. Julian, we need to talk about Leo. I know you trust him. I know he's your friend. But there is something I need to tell you, and I don't know how to say it in a letter, so I will say it badly and hope you understand. Leo came to see me on Tuesday. He said it was a medical call. My head aches, you know, but he didn't bring his bag. He didn't take my pulse. He sat on the edge of my bed and he talked. He talked about you, about your work, about the strain you're under, and then he talked about me, about how I was a distraction, about how your marriage was suffering, about how Vivian was fragile. Julian, it wasn't what he said. It was how he said it, as though he were arranging pieces on a board, as though he had a plan and I was in the way of it. I may be imagining things. I often do, but I don't think I'm imagining this. Please come to Ashgrove this weekend. I need to see your face when I tell you. Mem. The third letter was undated, but the paper was more creased than the others, as though it had been read and reread many times. My darling, I found something today. In the drawer of the desk in the library, the one that Edmund uses when he stays at Ashgrove. I shouldn't have been looking. I was looking for writing paper, that's all. But the drawer stuck, and when I pulled harder, something fell out from beneath a false bottom. It was a document, a contract, or something like one. I don't understand legal language very well, but your name was on it, and Edmund's name, and there were figures, large figures, and something about the rights to your work. Your future work, Julian, all of it. I don't know what it means, but it frightened me. It frightened me very much. I put it back. I haven't told anyone. I'm telling you, come quickly. Monsieur Poirot sat back in his chair. His tisane had gone cold. George, who possessed the near supernatural ability to sense the precise moment a beverage ceased to be palatable, appeared silently and replaced it with a fresh cup. Merci, Georges. Very good, sir. Poirot continued reading. The fourth and fifth letters were shorter, more agitated. Margot wrote of being watched. A sensation, she said. like being in one of Julian's paintings, trapped under the gaze of an observer she could not see. She wrote of footsteps in the corridor at Ashgrove late at night, of a conversation overheard between Edmund and Leo, hushed, urgent, terminated abruptly when she entered the room, of a growing feeling that the walls of the beautiful old house were closing in around her. The sixth letter contained a single sentence that made Poirot's mustache bristle. Julian, I think someone has been putting something in my drinks. The seventh and final letter was dated the 14th of September, 1933, 8 days before her death. Julian, I have decided to leave Ashgrove. I have decided to leave you. Not because I don't love you. God knows I love you, and God knows that is the stupidest thing I have ever done. And the list of stupid things I have done is not short. But because staying here is going to kill me. I mean that literally. I know things now, Julian. Things about Edmund, things about Leo, things about the money and the paintings and the contract I found. I know why Leo wants me gone, and I know why Edmund is afraid of me, and I know that between the two of them they have decided that I am a problem to be solved. I'm going to tell you everything this weekend, and then I'm going to leave, and you can decide what to do with the truth once I've given it to you. I love you. That hasn't changed, but love doesn't stop you from drowning. Monsieur Poirot set down the final letter and pressed his fingertips together in the posture of a man who is thinking very hard indeed. Love doesn't stop you from drowning. A woman had written those words 8 days before she was found drowned in a lake. Either Margot Lennox possessed a gift for prophecy, or something far more sinister was at work. He turned to the sketches. Julian Doyle had been a compulsive draftsman. The sketches were quick, assured, captured in a few strokes of charcoal or pencil, but they were not random. As Poirot spread them out and examined them in sequence, a pattern emerged. Several were of Margot, her face in profile, her hands clasped, her hair falling across one eye. But others were of different subjects entirely. There was a sketch of a hand, not Margot's, broader, masculine, holding a glass. There was a study of a window, the curtains partly drawn, as seen from outside in the dark. There was a sketch of the lake at Ashgrove, rendered in quick, nervous strokes, with a particular section of the shoreline circled in red pencil. And there, among the last sketches, was a drawing of a small glass bottle, unlabeled, carefully rendered. Beside it, in Julian's handwriting, 2 words, chloral hydrate. Poirot stared at those 2 words for a very long time. Chloral hydrate, a sedative. In moderate doses, it induced sleep. In larger doses, combined with alcohol, it could render a person so profoundly unconscious that they might not wake even if their face were submerged in water. Margot Lennox had been found drowned with a high level of alcohol in her blood. But had anyone tested for chloral hydrate? In 1933, in a rural English village, at an inquest that no one had reason to question, Poirot already knew the answer. Edmund Farley lived in a large, cold house in Belgravia, the kind of house that had been designed in an era when the purpose of architecture was to make the occupant feel insignificant and the visitor feel unwelcome. Poirot was admitted by a butler whose face suggested he had been in continuous service since the Boer War and had not enjoyed a single day of it. Monsieur Poirot to see Mr. Farley. The butler led him through a marble entrance hall, hung, Poirot noticed, with no fewer than 4 Julian Doyle paintings, and into a study at the rear of the house. It was a room that announced its owner's wealth without troubling itself about taste. Dark paneling, heavy curtains, a massive desk, and on every available surface, objects, bronzes, ceramics, jade figurines, small paintings in ornate frames. The room of a man who acquired things because acquiring things was all he knew how to do. Edmund Farley was standing by the window when Poirot entered. He was a large man, not fat, but solidly built, with broad shoulders and thick, capable hands. His face was smooth, clean-shaven, with heavy-lidded eyes that gave him the look of a man perpetually on the verge of falling asleep. He was 50, perhaps, but looked older. Monsieur Poirot. He did not offer his hand. I was told you might call. Vivienne telephoned. Madame Hale has engaged me to make certain inquiries. About Julian's death. Yes, she mentioned that. Rather late in the day, wouldn't you say? The man's been dead 7 months. The truth, Monsieur Farley, is not subject to an expiration date. A ghost of a smile crossed Farley's heavy features. Sit down, Monsieur Poirot. You'll have brandy. No, suit yourself. He poured one for himself, a generous measure, and settled into the chair behind his desk with the air of a man preparing to be interrogated and rather looking forward to the sport of it. You were Julian Doyle's principal patron, said Poirot. His only patron, for all practical purposes. I bought his first significant painting in 1926 and continued buying steadily until his death. I own 37 of his works. 38 once the exhibition is over and I collect the last one. A considerable investment. An act of faith, Monsieur Poirot. Julian was a genius, not a fashionable genius. He never would have been that, but a real one, the kind whose work will be hanging in the National Gallery 100 years from now. I recognized that early, and I backed my judgment. With great generosity. With great self-interest. I'm a collector. I do not give, I invest. The distinction is important. Of course. Now, Monsieur Farley, the night of the 21st of September, 1933, Margot Lennox died at Ashgrove. You were present. The heavy-lidded eyes blinked once. I was. Tell me what you remember. Farley swirled his brandy, watching the amber liquid catch the light. Dinner was at 8. Julian, Vivienne, Margot, Leo Stannard, Roland Arden, and myself. Julian was in high spirits. He'd finished the Hartington portrait, and there was talk of a major commission from the Tate. Margot was drinking heavily, as usual. Vivienne was civil but strained. The rest of us made conversation and pretended we couldn't feel the temperature in the room. The temperature? Between Julian and Margot. Something had changed between them. There had always been a kind of electricity when they were together. Creative, sexual, volatile. But that evening it had curdled into something else. They barely spoke to each other, and when they did, it was with a politeness that was worse than open hostility. And after dinner, we retired to the drawing room. Julian played records on the gramophone. Margot drank more, gin mostly. Around 10:30, she and Julian had words. Quiet words. I didn't hear what was said. And then she went out through the garden door. Julian stayed. He said she'd come back when she was ready. He said it as though he'd said it 100 times before. And did she come back? No. When did you retire for the evening? Shortly after 11. I went directly to my room. I read for a time, a catalogue, I think, from Sotheby's, and fell asleep. And you heard nothing in the night? No sound from the grounds, the lake? Nothing. Poirot watched him. Farley met his gaze without flinching, but that meant nothing. The most accomplished liars were those who did not flinch. Monsieur Farley, I must ask you about a document, a contract concerning the rights to Julian Doyle's future work. Margot Lennox discovered this document in a desk at Ashgrove. It bore your name and Julian's. Something shifted in Farley's face. Not much. The heavy lids drooped a fraction further. The jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. But enough for Poirot. That was a private business arrangement. Describe it. Julian needed money. His paintings sold, but not quickly enough to maintain Ashgrove, and Vivienne's tastes were not cheap. I offered him an advance, a substantial one, in exchange for the exclusive right to purchase his output for a period of 10 years. It was a standard patronage agreement. And if Julian were to die during those 10 years, Farley's hand paused, the brandy glass halfway to his lips. The rights would revert to his estate, but the paintings already in my possession, and any completed at the time of his death, would remain mine, including any posthumous works discovered in his studio. A silence. Including those, yes. Such as, for example, a hidden portrait of Margot Lennox, painted in secret during the last months of his life. Farley set down his glass. His heavy-lidded eyes were no longer sleepy. They were calculating. If such a painting exists, and I understand it does, then yes, under the terms of our agreement, it belongs to me. It exists, said Poirot. It is quite remarkable, and it is at the center of a mystery that is becoming more complex by the hour. You can't seriously believe Julian was murdered, Poirot. The man had a bad heart. Leo Stannard certified the death himself. Ah, yes, said Poirot gently. Dr. Stannard. We shall come to Dr. Stannard presently. He rose. One more question, Monsieur Farley. The painting of Margot Lennox, this posthumous portrait, what would you say it is worth? On the open market? Farley's eyes glittered. If it is as good as Vivian claims, and given the story attached to it, a dead artist painting his dead lover, the scandal, the romance, the tragedy, he paused. It would be the most valuable Julian Doyle painting in existence. £20,000 at a conservative estimate, possibly more. Merci, said Poirot. That is most illuminating. He left the house and stood for a moment on the pavement, the London wind tugging at his coat. £20,000. In 1936, a fortune. And Edmund Farley, under the terms of his contract, owned it. People had been murdered for far less. Dr. Leo Stannard's consulting rooms in Harley Street were everything a Harley Street practice should be. Hushed, tasteful, faintly medicinal, with a waiting room furnished in the kind of muted elegance that simultaneously reassured the patient and informed them that the bill would be considerable. The doctor himself was another matter entirely. Stannard was younger than Poirot had expected. 40, perhaps, with the kind of handsomeness that women described as distinguished and other men found vaguely irritating. Dark hair, graying at the temples, a strong jaw, blue eyes that held a quality of intense, focused attention, as though whatever you were saying was the most important thing he had ever heard. He wore a beautifully tailored suit, and his handshake was firm, warm, and precisely 3 seconds long. A practiced man, Poirot thought. A man who has made a study of putting others at ease. Monsieur Poirot, please sit down. Tea. I apologize for the delay. My last patient ran over. A countess with anxiety. They always take longer. He smiled. It was a very good smile. Poirot did not trust it for a moment. Doctor? Stannard, you were Julian Doyle's personal physician. I was. For nearly 10 years. And you certified his death as heart failure. I did. Julian had a congenital weakness of the left ventricle, diagnosed 3 years before his death, in fact. I'd been monitoring it closely. His death, while tragic, was not unexpected from a medical standpoint. And yet, Madame Hale tells me that her husband was, to all appearances, in excellent health. Stannard's expression became that of a patient teacher explaining to a slow child. The heart is deceptive, Monsieur Poirot. A man may feel perfectly well and harbor a condition that could kill him in an instant. Julian's case was complicated by his lifestyle. The late nights, the drinking, the emotional stress of his work. I had warned him repeatedly to moderate his habits. He refused. You conducted an examination of the body. I did, thoroughly. There were no signs of foul play, no marks, no wounds, no indication of poisoning. The symptoms were entirely consistent with sudden cardiac arrest. And you performed this examination alone? A slight pause. I did. Julian was my patient. It was my responsibility. You did not feel it necessary to involve the police or to request an autopsy. There was no reason to. The cause of death was clear. Was it? Stannard's blue eyes narrowed fractionally. What are you implying, Monsieur Poirot? I'm implying nothing. I'm asking questions. This is what I do, Doctor. I ask questions and the answers, even the answers that are not given. They tell me things. Poirot let the silence stretch. He had learned that silence, properly deployed, was the most powerful interrogation tool in existence. People could resist questions. They could not resist the void. Stannard broke first. You've been talking to Vivian. Naturally. She's not well, Poirot. She hasn't been well since Julian's death. Grief does strange things to the mind. It creates patterns where none exist, finds conspiracies in coincidence. I've seen it before, many times. She has convinced herself that Julian was murdered, and she is looking for anyone who will validate that conviction. And you believe she's wrong? I believe she's a grieving woman who needs compassion, not a detective. Poirot nodded slowly. Then he said, very casually, tell me about chloral hydrate, Doctor. The change in Stannard's face was almost imperceptible. Almost. A flicker of something in the blue eyes. Not fear exactly, but recognition. The recognition of a man who has just heard a card turned that he had hoped would remain face down. Chloral hydrate is a sedative. It's commonly prescribed for insomnia. And in combination with alcohol. The combination is dangerous, potentially fatal. It was a common enough means of incapacitation in the last century. What they used to call a Mickey Finn. And you prescribed chloral hydrate, did you not? To several of your patients? I may have done. It was a standard prescription at the time. To Margot Lennox, for instance. Another silence. This one longer. Stannard's hands, Poirot noticed, had moved from the arms of his chair to his lap, where they clasped each other tightly. Margot came to me once or twice for headaches and sleeplessness. I may have prescribed chloral hydrate. I don't recall the specifics. It was 3 years ago. Of course. 3 years is a long time. Memory fades. Poirot paused. And yet, Doctor, there are some things that one does not forget. Such as the death of a young woman whom one has been treating. A woman found drowned with alcohol in her blood. A woman who, if she had also ingested a dose of chloral hydrate, might have been rendered entirely unable to save herself from the water. Stannard stood up. His face had gone very white. I think this interview is over, Monsieur Poirot. As you wish. But one more thing, Doctor. Margot Lennox wrote in a letter that you visited her at Ashgrove in the weeks before her death. That you spoke to her, not about her health, but about Julian. That you advised her to leave. I was concerned about her well-being, about the effect the relationship was having on both her and Julian. Or perhaps you were concerned about something else entirely, about what Margot had discovered, about the document in Edmund Farley's desk, about the arrangement between Farley and Julian that was making one man very rich and the other a kind of prisoner. Stannard's jaw clenched. I know nothing about any arrangement. No. And yet you and Edmund Farley were observed in hushed, urgent conversation at Ashgrove on more than one occasion. A conversation that ceased abruptly whenever Margot entered the room. Poirot rose, collected his hat and cane, and moved to the door. At the threshold, he turned. One learns a great deal from the paintings of Julian Doyle, Doctor. He painted what he saw. That is what everyone says. And I wonder what he saw in those final months, when he sat alone in his studio with the portrait of a dead woman and his grey cells working their way toward the truth. He left the doctor standing in his consulting room, white-faced and silent. Roland Arden was waiting for Poirot at a corner table in the Café Royal, half hidden behind a column, nursing a whiskey and soda with the air of a man who has been drinking steadily since noon and intends to continue. Sit down, Poirot. I've been expecting you. You have something to tell me. I have a great deal to tell you. and none of it is pretty. Poirot sat. He did not order. Arden leaned forward, his crooked face drawn tight with something that might have been guilt or might have been fear, or might, Poirot reflected, have been both. I lied to Vivienne. Not about the big things, Julian's death, the painting, all of that, but about something else. Something I should have told her years ago. Continue. The night Margot died. I didn't go to my room at 11 and fall asleep. I went to my room, yes, but I didn't sleep. I couldn't. There was something wrong. I'd felt it all evening, a tension in the house like a bowstring about to snap. So I sat by my window and smoked, and around midnight, I saw something. What did you see? I saw someone moving through the garden, towards the lake. Not Margot. She'd gone out hours before, and I assumed she was either by the lake already or had gone walking in the woods. This was someone else. Someone coming from the house. Did you recognize this person? Arden drained his whiskey. It was dark. There was a moon, but it kept going behind clouds. I couldn't see the face, but I saw the shape, the build, the way they moved, and I saw something else. They were carrying something small that caught the light for a moment when the moon came out. A bottle. Arden looked at him sharply. You know, I suspect. A small glass bottle. Chloral hydrate, perhaps. I didn't know what it was then. I didn't know until much later, until after Julian's death, until Vivienne showed me the sketches, and I saw Julian's drawing of the bottle with those two words. And then I remembered what I had seen, and I understood. Who was it, Monsieur Arden? The figure in the garden. Arden's hands were shaking. He placed them flat on the table to still them. I wasn't certain then. I'm still not certain now. But the build, the height, the shoulders, the way they walked, it looked like Leo. It looked like Leo Stannard. The Café Royal hummed around them. Waiters glided. Glasses clinked. The world carried on its business, indifferent to the quiet detonation taking place at the corner table. And you said nothing, said Poirot. At the inquest, you said nothing. In the month that followed, the years that followed, you said nothing. What was I supposed to say? That I thought I saw a shadowy figure that might have been the dead woman's doctor going for a walk in the moonlight? There was nothing to connect it to Margot's death. Nothing at all, not until the sketches. And yet you carry the weight of it. Arden's crooked mouth twisted. Julian was my closest friend. Margot she was extraordinary, infuriating and extraordinary. And I said nothing, and she died, and then he died, and I have said nothing for 3 years. So yes, Poirot, I carry the weight. There is something else, said Poirot. It was not a question. Arden stared at him. How do you? Yes, there is something else. He reached into his jacket and produced a small folded piece of paper. I found this in Julian's studio after his death, tucked into the stretcher bars of the portrait. The hidden portrait of Margot. Vivienne doesn't know about it. No one does. Poirot unfolded the paper. It was a note written in Julian Doyle's unmistakable hand. If I am found dead, it was not my heart. Look at the painting. Look at the rose. Poirot read the note 3 times, committing every word to memory. Then he folded it, placed it in his breast pocket, and stood. Monsieur Arden, you will accompany me to Ashgrove tomorrow. Vivienne, Edmund Farley, and Dr. Stannard will be there as well. It is time for the truth. And what is the truth? Poirot looked at him, looked through him with those remarkable green eyes that seemed to see not just what was there, but what had been there and what had been concealed. The truth, my friend, is in the portrait. Julian Doyle told us so, and now Hercule Poirot will read what the dead painter wrote. Ashgrove was everything Vivienne had described, and more. a handsome Elizabethan house of warm brick and tall chimneys, set in grounds that swept down through formal gardens to a lake screened by willows. In the November light, the lake was the color of pewter, its surface still, reflecting the heavy sky. The willows had lost most of their leaves, and their bare branches hung over the water like the fingers of drowned hands. Poirot stood at the edge of the lake and stared at the water. Somewhere beneath this surface, on a September night 3 years ago, a young woman had died. The water had closed over her, and the world had accepted the verdict. Accident, misadventure, too much gin on a dark night, and moved on. But Julian Doyle had not moved on. Julian Doyle had painted. And the painting, as Poirot was beginning to understand, had been the dead painter's final testimony. Not a love letter after all. Or not only that, a confession, a map, a cry for justice disguised as art. Look at the painting. Look at the rose. The rose. The red rose in Margot's hand. Poirot had studied the painting carefully the previous evening, examining every inch with a magnifying glass. And he had seen what Julian Doyle had seen, what the painter's eye had captured, and his conscious mind had understood only too late. The rose was wrong, not wrong in technique. The brushwork was flawless, but wrong in its details. Poirot had compared the rose in the portrait to the sketches Julian had made of Margot during her lifetime, and in every earlier sketch, her hands had been empty. She was not a woman who held things. She gestured, she waved, she let her hands fall at her sides. The rose was an addition, something Julian had put into her hand from memory or imagination. And the rose itself, it was not a garden rose. Poirot had noticed this immediately. The petals were too regular, too symmetrical, and the stem was rendered with a precision that suggested Julian had not been drawing from memory at all, but from an object before him, an object that was not a flower. It was a bottle, a small glass bottle, its stopper the shape of a rosebud, its body the color of deep red glass. Poirot had seen bottles like this before. Decorative perfume bottles sold in chemists' shops throughout London, but also used by certain practitioners for the storage of liquid medicines. Julian Doyle, in his portrait, had placed into his dead lover's hand not a rose, but the image of the vessel that had killed her. He had painted the murder weapon, and he had done it, Poirot believed, unconsciously at first. The painter's eye recording what the mind was not yet ready to accept. And then, as understanding dawned, deliberately. A message hidden in plain sight. A portrait that was also an accusation. But an accusation of whom? The 5 of them gathered in the drawing room at Ashgrove at 3 o'clock that afternoon. Vivian had opened the house for the occasion, and a fire had been lit, but the room still carried the chill of 7 months' abandonment. Dust sheets covered the furniture. The curtains smelled of damp. The paintings on the walls, all Doyle's, stared down from their frames like witnesses called to testify. Vivian sat by the fire, very straight, very pale. Roland Arden stood by the window, his arms folded, his face unreadable. Edmund Farley occupied the largest chair with the territorial ease of a man accustomed to taking up space. And Dr. Leo Stannard stood apart from the others, near the door, as though calculating the distance to the exit. Poirot had arranged the portrait on an easel at the front of the room. The dead woman looked out at the living with her green eyes and her red rose and her expression of dangerous, beautiful knowledge. "Thank you all for coming," said Poirot. "I know that it is not a pleasant thing to be summoned to the house where a man died, to a house that holds, for each of you, memories that are perhaps not entirely comfortable. But I have asked you here because it is in this house that the truth lies. And the truth, my friends, has waited long enough." He stood before them, small, immaculate, his hands clasped behind his back. "Let me tell you a story. It is the story of 2 deaths. The first, that of Margot Lennox, a young woman of remarkable beauty and no small courage, who drowned in the lake at Ashgrove on the night of the 21st of September, 1933. The second, that of Julian Doyle, a painter of genius, who died in his studio on the 23rd of April, 1936, supposedly of heart failure. Supposedly? Stannard's voice was sharp. I shall come to that. Let us begin with Margot. He moved to the easel and stood beside the portrait. Margot Lennox was Julian Doyle's mistress, his model, and his muse. She was also, in the months before her death, increasingly frightened. She had discovered things, dangerous things, about the financial arrangements between Julian and his patron, Edmund Farley. Farley's heavy-lidded eyes opened wide for the first time. Margot found, hidden in a desk at Ashgrove, a contract. This contract gave Monsieur Farley exclusive rights to Julian's artistic output for a period of 10 years in exchange for financial support. The terms were, to put it simply, exploitative. Julian, in a moment of financial desperation, had signed away his creative freedom, and Farley, who had the collector's instinct to own, to control, to possess, had ensured that every painting Julian produced would belong to him. That's a gross misrepresentation, said Farley coldly. Is it? Then permit me to continue, and you may correct me at the end. Margot, having discovered this contract, threatened to expose it. She wrote to Julian. She told him what she had found, and she became, overnight, a danger. Not only to Farley, but to anyone whose interests were tied to the continuation of this arrangement. Such as, said Poirot, turning slowly, Dr. Stannard. Stannard stiffened. I had nothing to do with any contract. Not directly, no, but you were aware of it. You were, in fact, Farley's physician as well as Julian's. A fact you have not disclosed, and Farley was paying you handsomely to monitor Julian's health and to ensure that the painter remained productive. Your interest in Julian's well-being was not entirely medical. It was financial. The room was very still. Margot knew this, or suspected it. She wrote of your visit to her, a visit in which you urged her to leave Ashgrove. You told her she was a distraction. You told her that Vivian was fragile. But what you were really telling her, Doctor, was to go away and keep quiet. This is outrageous. Is it? Then tell me, Doctor, why did you prescribe chloral hydrate to Margot Lennox? The silence that followed was the silence of a held breath. Chloral hydrate, Poirot continued. A sedative, effective in small doses, in larger doses, combined with alcohol, potentially fatal. Margot Lennox was a heavy drinker. You knew this. And you prescribed her a drug that, if taken in excess while drinking, would render her unconscious, or worse. Stannard's face had gone the color of chalk. I prescribed it for her insomnia, in a standard, safe dosage. What she did with it, or what was done with it. Poirot turned to the room. On the night of the 21st of September, 1933, Margot Lennox left Ashgrove House after a quarrel with Julian. She went to the lake, as she often did when upset. She had been drinking heavily at dinner and afterwards, but she had also, I believe, been given an additional dose of chloral hydrate, administered not by herself, but by someone else, someone who added it to her drink during the evening. Who? Whispered Vivian. A person who had access to the drug, a person who knew its effects, a person who had a reason to want Margot Lennox silenced permanently. Poirot paused. He looked at each of them in turn. Vivian, rigid with attention. Roland, grey-faced by the window. Farley, very still, his thick hands gripping the arms of his chair. Stannard, standing by the door as if turned to stone. A witness saw a figure leaving the house at midnight, moving towards the lake. This figure was carrying a small object, a bottle, perhaps. The bottle that Julian Doyle later sketched in his notebook. The bottle labeled chloral hydrate. Poirot moved to the portrait. And then there is the painting, Julian Doyle's final testimony. He painted Margot from memory, yes, but he also painted from evidence. The evidence of his own eyes, which had seen things his mind had refused to acknowledge. And what did he paint? He pointed at the portrait, at the rose in Margot's hand. A rose that is not a rose that is, in fact, a bottle. A small glass bottle with a stopper shaped like a rosebud. A bottle of a very particular type. The type used by Dr. Leo Stannard for the dispensing of liquid medications. Every head in the room turned towards Stannard. The doctor's face was no longer chalk white. It was grey. The grey of a man who sees the walls closing in. Julian recognized it, said Poirot. Not at first. At first, I believe he painted it unconsciously. His artist's memory reproducing what his eye had seen but his mind had suppressed. But as the painting progressed, as his grief sharpened into suspicion, he understood what he had painted, and he wrote in his journal, "I see it now. The rose, the hand. It was there all along. She was not alone at the water. He confronted you, didn't he, Doctor?" Poirot's voice was quiet now, but it filled the room. He came to you and told you what he knew. About the chloral hydrate, about the bottle, about what you had done to Margot. I didn't. And you realized that the same method that had disposed of Margot Lennox could dispose of Julian Doyle, a man with a diagnosed heart condition, a man who drank, a man whose death, if certified by his own physician, would raise no questions. No. You administered a dose of chloral hydrate to Julian Doyle on the evening of the 22nd of April, perhaps in a glass of wine, perhaps in his evening coffee. The drug, combined with the alcohol already in his system, induced cardiac failure. You found him the next morning. You certified the death, and the man who had painted the truth, who had encoded the evidence of murder in a portrait, was silenced. Stannard was shaking. But Julian Doyle was cleverer than you knew, Doctor. He had prepared. He had hidden a note in the stretcher bars of the painting. If I'm found dead, it was not my heart. Look at the painting. Look at the rose. He knew. He knew that the truth was in the canvas, if only someone would look closely enough. The room erupted. Stannard broke. Not all at once. Not with a dramatic confession or a theatrical collapse, but in the way that foundations break, slowly, under a weight they were never built to bear. He sank into a chair by the door, and for a long time he said nothing. The room waited. The fire crackled. The portrait of Margot Lennox gazed from the easel with her green eyes, serene and damning. When Stannard finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. "I didn't mean to kill her." Vivian made a sound, half gasp, half sob, and pressed her hand to her mouth. "I mean that literally," Stannard continued, his eyes fixed on the floor. "The chloral hydrate, I put it in her gin at dinner, not to kill her, to sedate her, to make her sleep. She was going to ruin everything. She was going to tell Julian about the contract, about my arrangement with Edmund, about all of it. And if Julian found out, he would have torn up the agreement, severed ties with Edmund, and I would have lost. We would both have lost a great deal of money," said Poirot. "Yes, a great deal of money. I'm not a rich man, Poirot. Harley Street looks grand, but the reality is debt, staggering debt. Edmund was paying me $500 a year to keep Julian healthy and productive. It was the only thing keeping me afloat. So you drugged Margot. I put enough in her drink to make her sleep through the night. That was all. But she didn't stay in the house. She went out, she went to the lake, and the combination of the alcohol and the chloral hydrate, she must have lost consciousness by the water. She fell in and..." His voice broke. "And you did nothing," said Poirot. "You knew from the moment her body was found that the chloral hydrate in her system had contributed to her death. And you said nothing. What could I say? It would have meant admitting what I'd done. My career, my license, my freedom, everything would have been destroyed. And Julian? Vivien's voice cut through the room like a knife. Did you kill Julian too? Stannard closed his eyes. He came to me in April. He'd been working on that damned painting for months, and he saw it. The bottle. He recognized it. One of my dispensing bottles. I'd used one just like it at Ashgrove that weekend. He'd seen it in my medical bag, and his painter's memory had reproduced it perfectly, transformed it into a rose in the portrait. He confronted me. He said he was going to the police. And so you killed him? I gave him the same drug, chloral hydrate, in his evening coffee. I knew about his heart condition. I knew that the combination would be overwhelming. I went to his studio the next morning. He was slumped over his desk, dead. The painting was on the easel. I certified the death, and I left. The confession hung in the air like smoke. Edmund Farley had not moved. He sat in his chair, massive and still, his heavy-lidded eyes fixed on Stannard with an expression that Poirot could not quite read. Disgust, perhaps, or calculation, or fear. "And you, Monsieur Farley," said Poirot, turning to him. "What was your role in this?" "I had no role. I knew nothing." "You knew nothing of the chloral hydrate? Nothing of the plan to silence Margot?" "Nothing. And yet you continued to profit from the arrangement. Julian's death, far from inconveniencing you, made you the owner of 38 paintings, including the posthumous portrait, which alone is worth a fortune. You profited from a murder you did nothing to prevent." "I didn't know." Farley's voice was raw. Poirot regarded him in silence for a long moment. Then he nodded, not in agreement, but in acknowledgement. Perhaps you did not know, but you suspected. You suspected that something was wrong, and you chose not to inquire. You chose ignorance because ignorance was profitable. And that, Monsieur Farley, is a kind of guilt that the law may not punish, but the conscience, if you possess one, certainly will. He turned to Vivian. "Madame Hale, your instinct was correct. Your husband was murdered. He was murdered because he was a painter who could not stop seeing the truth, even when the truth was terrible. He painted the evidence of Margot's death into a portrait, and that painting became his death sentence." Vivienne's eyes were bright with tears she had not yet shed. "And the painting itself? What happens to it now?" Poirot looked at the portrait, at the honey-haired woman with the green eyes, at the rose that was not a rose, at the love and the death and the truth all layered together in oil and pigment on a canvas that a dead man had hidden behind a wall. "The painting," said Poirot, "goes to the police. It is evidence. It is, perhaps, the most remarkable piece of evidence I have ever encountered. A murder testified to, not by a witness, but by a work of art. Julian Doyle painted the instrument of death into the hand of the woman who was killed by it. He made his canvas speak. And it has spoken, at last, to the right listener." He paused. "As for the rest, the contract, the money, the arrangement, these are matters for the lawyers. But the essential thing, the thing that matters, is this. Margot Lennox was not killed by the lake, or by the gin, or by the night. She was killed by greed. By the greed of a man who valued his comfort above a woman's life, and by the cowardice of a man who chose to profit from the silence that followed." The police arrived at Ashgrove within the hour. Inspector Graves of the Berkshire Constabulary, a solid, unhurried man with a large moustache and an air of permanent skepticism, took statements from all present. Dr. Leo Stannard was arrested and charged with the murders of Margot Lennox and Julian Doyle. Edmund Farley was questioned at length regarding his knowledge of the events and released pending further investigation, though the expression on Inspector Graves' face suggested that the questioning was far from over. Roland Arden was the last to leave Ashgrove. He stood in the entrance hall with Poirot and Vivian, his coat over his arm, his crooked face haggard with exhaustion and something deeper. A relief, perhaps, that comes from finally setting down a burden carried too long. "I should have spoken sooner," he said. That night, what I saw from my window, I should have said something. "Yes," said Poirot, without softening it. "You should have." Arden nodded, accepting the judgment, and walked out into the November dark. Vivian stood in the doorway of the drawing room, looking at the empty easel where the portrait had stood. The police had taken it, wrapped in brown paper, carried away in the back of a car, transformed from a painting into Exhibit A. The wall above the fireplace was bare. "He loved her," said Vivian quietly. "Julian loved her. I always knew that, but I think he loved me too in his way, and I think at the end, what he was doing with that painting was not just solving a mystery. He was trying to make amends, to her and to me." Poirot considered this. "Your husband was a man of great talent and great flaws, madame. He saw the truth more clearly than most people, too clearly perhaps for his own safety. But in the end, he did what the best artists do. He left behind something that outlasted him, something that spoke when he could no longer speak. The painting was his final act. Not of love, though love was in it, but of justice." Vivian's eyes glistened. "Justice? Yes, I think he would have liked that." They stood together for a moment in the doorway of the old house, with the wind off the lake stirring the bare willows, and the last light fading from the Berkshire sky. Then Poirot put on his hat, adjusted it with precision, and descended the steps to the waiting car. "George," he said to his valet, who had materialized with supernatural punctuality, "we return to London." "Very good, sir. Shall I prepare a tisane upon arrival?" "A tisane, George, and a hot bath. And something for dinner. Something simple. An omelette, perhaps, with fine herbs. It has been, as they say, a most demanding day." As the car pulled away, Poirot glanced back through the rear window. Ashgrove House stood dark against the sky, its windows unlit, its chimneys cold. In one of those rooms, a painter had sat alone with his memories and his brushes and the ghost of a woman he had loved, and he had painted the truth. He had painted a murder, and the murder had painted him back. Poirot turned forward. The road to London stretched ahead, wet and gleaming in the headlamps. "The grey cells," he murmured to himself. "They are satisfied." But even as he said it, he thought of the portrait, of those green eyes, that honey-colored hair, that rose that was not a rose. And he wondered, as he often did after a case, whether justice was enough. Whether anything was enough, when love and death and art had become so thoroughly entwined that even the great Hercule Poirot could not say where one ended and the other began. The car moved on through the English night. The rain began again, and somewhere, in a police evidence room, a dead woman looked out from a canvas with eyes that saw everything and a rose in her hand that would bloom forever.